All right, welcome back to the program. In case you're just joining us, Johnson Chukwu, the Chief Executive Officer at Cowry Asset Management, is joining me from Lagos now. Mr. Chukwu, good morning to you and happy Monday. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Nancy, and compliments of the season. I don't know what the season is. The rainy season that we say compliment this time around.
Yes, rainy season, second half, third quarter, so many things. But let's get straight to business. Mr. Chukwu, the reopening, airlines will be opening. At least flights will resume, I think, this week. There would be, there's for the lockdown, there's a gradual ease right now. My first question to you is, the lockdown, did it work? Because we're seeing rising cases in Nigeria right now, 28,000 plus confirmed cases. Did the lockdown really work?
Nancy, I've said this repeatedly in your program that I don't think we did the right things during the lockdown. And I don't think we are moving as fast as we should when it comes to trying to overtake this pandemic or this infection. If you look at the figures as at the close of business yesterday, as at this morning, you will observe that total testing that has been done by Nigeria is only 151,000. Total testing across the country, 151,000 only, of which we know there are about 28,711 that are infected. In terms of tests per population, we have only tested about 733 per 1 million of our population. Compare that to South Africa, that had about 198,000 positive cases. They've tested more than 1.9 million people. They've tested 30,000 per 1 million of their population. So if we have only tested 151,000 since the beginning of the entire testing process, then how are we going to overtake the infection? So in effect, the lockdown, as far as I'm concerned, did not work, because the purpose of the lockdown was to ensure that we tested people and then isolated those who tested positive so that they will infect other people. And because we didn't do that, we are seeing massive community infection. And I think we actually, what we are seeing is a tip of the iceberg, because I don't think we really have a good record of those who are infected. I believe the population of those who are infected is far more than what we are currently reporting. If we have only tested 151,000 in a country of 206 million, then we've not really scratched the surface. And that's my concern.
Do you think that perhaps the authorities would really love to test, but perhaps we do not have the infrastructure, because the whole world is also grappling for that, for testing kits and what have you? I think I read, was it last week or so, that the drug, is it remdesivir or so, that the US has taken all the global supply of the medicine. So you can imagine what developing countries such as ours also passing through.
Well, what I would say is that it is already too late for us to say we can't lay our hands on the testing. So Ghana has tested more than us. I mean, when you compare Nigeria, the size of the Nigerian economy and that of Ghana, you won't compare, they're incomparables. The size of Ghana is just barely the size of Lagos economy. So there's no reason why Ghana should have tested more than Nigeria has tested. South Africa is the second largest economy in Africa. And South Africa, like I said, has tested more than 10 times the number of people who've tested. So it's not a case of assessing the testing kits or the reagents. It's just basically that we are just moving too fast, too slowly. And previously we used to hear that the sample collection was the process. The challenge was transporting the samples to the molecular labs. But we now have a multiple number of molecular labs in the country, and we are still not testing. Nancy, there's no excuse why we are only testing 151,000 in the whole country. 151,000 in a country of 206 million population. There's no justification for that. It's not a matter of that. I think maybe we adopted the Donald Trump strategy, and the more you test, the more you get more infected people. Donald Trump said he was asking them to slow down the testing. Maybe we took a strategic initiative to slow down the testing so that we won't actually have to deal with the size of the people who are infected.
As you talk about Donald Trump, what also came to my mind, what he said is that coronavirus will disappear. He's of the view that, the infection will just disappear, it will disappear. So do you think that even with the rising cases that we still have enough arsenal to combat and to battle this infection, or we are taking the Donald Trump approach? Since you brought me to the den, I've come out of the den now. You've talked of Donald Trump, so let's talk about that a bit. If the world, if the world is also drawing some kind of inspiration, however it is, however you want to, name that from Donald Trump, that's going to disappear. So the rest of the world is just like, okay, what do we do?
Well, Nancy, you're talking of whether the world is drawing inspiration from Donald Trump's position that the infection will soon just disappear.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
I think the world's gotten to a point where they now take some of the statements made by the president of the U.S. with some level of levity. Unfortunately, and that's very unfortunate because that country is supposed to be the biggest country, the strongest country in the world. But they've gotten a president who has been so flippant in his statements. I'm sorry to use those words, that the world no longer take the president of the U.S. very seriously. And of course, that also means that the world may begin to discountenance the positions taken by the U.S. as a country. And it's actually a shame that we've gotten to that point. I mean, if you go to the social media, it's replete with so many of his statements as it relates to COVID. Like the one I just mentioned. I mean, the president saying that because the testing is actually coming up with several positives, so the best thing is to reduce the testing. And that was laughable by every standard. So his statement that it will soon disappear, we've done so well with the COVID, people are beginning to dismiss those things with a wave of hands.
Is reopening the economy reopening the economy safely a harder decision than shutting it down? Because you're not just seeing that even in Nigeria, across the world. UAE and Saudi Arabia are having rising cases even after lifting curfews and lockdown. So is a safe reopening of the economy a harder decision to take than shutting it down?
Okay, the challenge the world has is that we are yet to fully understand the dynamics of this virus. We've seen situations where even the World Health Organization has come up with contradictory positions as it relates to the method of transmission or those who can transmit it. We have heard them say that asymptomatic patients can transmit it. We've also heard them say that asymptomatic patients can transmit it. So we really don't seem to understand exactly how this virus works. And that's a challenge. That has actually created a challenge when it comes to opening the economies. But the reality is that we can't lock down the economies forever. There is just a limit to the timeline you can keep the economies locked down and still have people maintain their sanity, maintain their sort of livelihood. So we have to deal with the pandemic by adopting some of the few things we understand about the virus as measures to prevent or minimize the level of infection. The issues about wearing masks, issues about hand wash, regular hand wash, issues about use of hand sanitizers. People just we have to face the reality of the situation is that we can't continue to lock down, and we just have to find safer ways to interact. Currently, a lot of people are avoiding physical meetings. The airlines will start flying. The debate had been whether they should leave the middle seats in the economy class open, empty. So the basic thing that the world has to come to terms with the fact that we are dealing with a very virulent viral disease, and that we don't fully understand how it moves from one person to the other. But we really can't continue to stay in our homes and have our doors locked, because that will also create its own greater economic pandemic that may actually be more devastating, particularly for third world countries like Nigeria, than even the health crisis.
Why do you think that the observation of the health protocols, physical distancing, wearing of masks, regular hand washing, usage of hand sanitizers, why is it that we're still having low compliance, even as Nigerians are clamoring for, we want to open up, we need to go back to work, we do not want to fall into poverty further, we do not want to be hungry. Why is it difficult to adhere to those compliance measures?
Nancy, what I have observed in the past few days is that a lot of Nigerians still don't believe COVID-19 exists, and it's so unfortunate. A lot of people don't believe that the virus is very virulent. It's only a small fraction of the Nigerian population, and I'm very serious with it because I had a friend who traveled to Ibadan last 2 weeks, and then I asked him when he told me they even socialized. I said, "Really?" He said, "Look, that even because he was wearing masks with the driver, and that people were laughing at him and said, look, that this so-called claim about this, that people are dying of other infections, not the virus." I think, like I mentioned earlier, the World Health Organization has also not helped matters. But on the part of the government, we need to create a lot more awareness. People do not believe that this virus exists. A lot of people don't believe it. Those who believe it do not understand all the protocols they need to observe, and people are taking it with levity. So a lot more awareness has to be created. That's why, as far as I'm concerned, because talking to people who I thought we are knowledgeable enough in the society, and they are still saying, this person may have died of another infection, and another person would have died of everything. Let me tell you, the general feeling is that if you talk to them, they tell you that of the 650-something people who have died of the infection, that less than 20% actually died of COVID-19, that a lot more of them died of other infections. So if people are taking those positions, then you can imagine why it's difficult for them to adhere to those protocols of keeping social distancing. I went to a place on Friday, and people walked in to come and have a good time. And I said, look, what is this? And you talk about people who are high-heeled in the society, and none of them was wearing masks. So I don't think Nigerians have come to the realization that this is real, it's very violent, it's very deadly, and that it could infect anybody.
Do you think that low compliance level is also coming from the trust deficit that Nigerians have with their leaders? Because if you take a look at, what you actually said, people, I experience it almost on a daily basis. I went out on Saturday, of course, wearing my mask. I was like constantly sanitizing my hands and all of that. In fact, my younger sister calls me the DG of NCDC because of the way I observed this protocol, but I saw people, I was like, no, madam, no COVID. In fact, people have told me, I beg, is a game for the boys to eat money. And you find me educating people there. No, it's I beg, forget that thing, I beg, nothing like that. I was like, so do you think that it's not that Nigerians do not want to comply, but they also have a trust deficit with their leaders? And it's not also that we have not done enough with communication. You can see channels like AIT for the past 3-4 months have done nothing than doing this kind of programs and bringing awareness, as well as other stations, not even making money, leaving profit right now and doing that of a social good. So do you think is trust deficit right now, that whatever our leaders say, I beg, we don't believe?
Okay, that's it. Well, that could be a contributory factor, but I don't think Nigeria is peculiar to Nigeria in this instance, because the demands of the protocol are anti-human, anti-social. So it preaches on our normal, natural interaction. I mean, today you can't shake hands, and that is not the way we are brought up. I mean, the world operates. If you look at even other countries, in countries like Italy that had one of the countries that had very severe cases, it got so bad that the police had to be arresting people on the street that came out to the streets. In India, we see videos of people being flogged. So it simply means that it's not just a case of Nigeria's lack of trust of their leadership, but that also is part of what we are dealing with. Because I've heard people make comments like, now that the governors are all declaring that they are infected because that they get paid when because they want to get money from the federal government. But I'm not aware that the federal government is disbursing money to states that are based on the number of infected cases they have. But I've heard comments like that, which is laughable, that people are pretending or proclaiming that they're infected. In fact, somebody said now it's not the turn of the governors to all claim that they're infected, because as you listen to the news, you hear more and more governors getting infected. So the reality is that we're dealing with a trust deficit peculiar to Nigeria, but also we're dealing with a viral infection that is demanding for people to behave not in their natural ways, but to live antisocial life, and they're finding it difficult to abide with.
Mr. Chukwu, let's dwell a bit on that. Is it really about that, or is it about that the government has not really... Okay, check out what happened during the lockdowns. A lot of Nigerians did complain of palliatives not getting to them, the government not being so humane to them. So is it really about is it more of antisocial, or it's really about that trust deficit that, you know, our government, Nigerians don't really trust the authorities anymore? For them to say, okay, it's a job of the boys now. Everybody, people have told me that severally, and I keep on educating almost on a daily basis.
You know, Nancy, it's unfortunate to say this on national TV. We know that governance in this country has been weak for a very long time. And I give you one of those highlights of those failure of governance is the issue of state lockdown. As you may be aware, during the interstate lockdown, people moved around. I know 1,000,001 people who went to Abuja, who went to the east, who came back from the east, who traveled multiple times. And nothing happened. So, but you had police at each of the checkpoints. I had somebody who traveled from all the way from Lagos to Akwa Ibom State, and he told me he crossed more than 8 state boundaries. And he said nothing happened. You just get there, you sort out the security men on the road, and then you continue going. So those are failures of governance, and those are the issues that impinge on people's trust about the leadership of their country, about rulership, about the need to abide by the statements made by the government. If the government said don't go anywhere, we're locking down the states, and you really lock in yourself in your house because the government has said they're locking down the states, interstate movement. And you know, your next door neighbor travels and goes wherever you wanted to go. So you lose trust in that government statement, the government making that statement that they've locked down the states. So those are the challenges. We are dealing with some level of failure at a governance level, at the bureaucratic level. But like I said, we're also dealing with a universal issue of antisocial demands, which are not natural to human behavior. Nancy, you can't imagine going home to your village and not hugging your mother. That's the implication of that. Your mother rushes to hug you, turn your back to her, at her. You know what would be her response? You understand what I'm saying? They say as your mother is you know you're a chief. Chief Nancy has come home and your mother rushes to come and embrace you. The likelihood you embrace her is very high. But that's what Brokaw said you shouldn't do. Because it's aged, if she gets infected, she will maybe not survive it. You're supposed to turn your back or start running away as she's running towards you. Just imagine what will happen in your village when you get there. And then your mother is running to you towards you, are running away from her. And the people say, what happened to our daughter? So the demands of the protocols are so antisocial that people, it will take some time for people to really conform to those practices. That's one thing. But we're also dealing with the issue of trust deficit, which I've highlighted earlier.
You know, it's really a very, like, the virus is called, is a novel virus, is a new thing. We're in a new normal. As you talked about, even my mom now, I keep on like calling and keep on reminding, Mommy, are you wearing mask? Are you, are you doing this? Are you sanitizing well? Are you doing all of that? So I guess I'm not just the only one in that boat, especially if you have loved ones, because the demography of the infection of this disease is, more for the elderly. It's not that those of us that are younger cannot contract it. With this thing that we just said now, in terms of perhaps trust deficit and all the other ancillary issues which you've raised, what came to my mind is, can the government also be truthful to itself and change the strategy and see that this strategy is not working? We've been talking, is communicating this and this, but Nigerians seem not to believe, Can there be a change of strategy? That's the A part of the question. The B part of the question is, is there even a strategy B to be able to tackle this? Do you understand what I'm saying, Mr. Chukwu?
Okay, yes. Okay, Nancy, let me tell you my take on it. We have to go back and look at our medical infrastructure architecture. And we ask ourselves, the current method we're using to deal with COVID-19, is it in line with our medical infrastructure architecture? And I don't think it's in line with it. In the first place, how many people in Nigerian society go to public hospitals? They believe that if you go to public hospital, you're not well attended to. So the COVID-19 arrangement is so that only public institutions, until recently when the state began to license or approve private sector, managed hospitals to treat COVID-19. Previously, it was a case where you had to be centralized, testing had to be centralized, the NCDC will come to your place like military invasion and then get everybody frightened and then get those people to the isolation center. It's not the structure we have. So we have to look back and say, look, how the average person in the village get treated when they are sick? And then where are the institutions that attend to those who are sick in our system? It's only we have to incorporate those systems or those institutions into the treatment mechanism or a treatment process. And my take is that you need to now train the pharmacists, the chemists, operators in the villages on some of the basic protocols, some of the basic preventive measures. And the people will rather trust the chemist who goes, say them, look, who goes, or in the village, sometimes you engage a town crier to call the villages to a village square and then educate them on some of the policies. They will rather entrust their confidence with the neighborhood chemists who they go to when they have headache or malaria or fever. And the guy is telling them, look, you need to use this and hand sanitizer. You need to wash hands 24 times in a day. You need to wear face masks because there is a new virus in town. Then you have to look at how do you equip such what they call last point of sale or last point of contact for medical services in the country. We are not equipping them; they have been excluded. You look at the primary health care center; they have been excluded, but you need to provide them with some of the PPE equipment, train them on some of the basic protocols, so that they will at the first instance manage cases that come to them, and then before they escalate to tertiary institution that can handle those cases better. Remember that most instances people are reported that infected came with fever, malaria, and similar common infection in the country. And the natural thing, they go to a chemist or a pharmacy, and then say they have headache or they have malaria. Because people go to there and proclaim what their infection is, and they say they have malaria, and then those people will begin to treat them of malaria, give them some outpatient drugs. But those people should also have the competence to, one, identify possible infection and probably recommend such people to the right authorities. If we don't incorporate those community-based and city-based treatment facilities or structures into the entire treatment process, we are not going to make a lot of progress. I also believe by now, general hospitals, the other tertiary institutions should have the capacity to test. The government should enable them to serve as, at the minimum, sample collection centers, so that when people come to their places and proclaim that they have malaria or they have high fever or they have typhoid, they can get the sample from those people and pass on to the NCDC, so that the process of collection will be enhanced. So if you want to wait and when people call in, you now send the NCDC team to go to those people to go and extract the sample, and then it takes 2 weeks to give them feedback, then it's not going to work. I think the architecture needs to be reviewed, and I think that is what is missing. We really need to go back and ask ourselves, how do we handle, what are the processes, what are the systems in place? What is our ecosystem for managing healthcare in the country? And make sure we integrate the entire ecosystem into the course of managing COVID-19. Until we do that, we're not going to improve the number of cases tested. We are going to continue to have increase in community transmission. And those who will ordinarily handle these cases are also getting infected, because you have the medical practitioners who are the rural areas, they could get infected easily because they don't even know what to do and they don't have any of the tools to protect themselves.
The question also would be, even as we try to reopen, is it really about reopening safely, or the worry that our authorities may not be capable of putting this pandemic under control? Because for me, you know, I look at it on a daily basis. I'm like, this virus or this pandemic has really exposed, you know, the fragility of our systems. It has also really exposed, you know, the government in terms of how fast, you know, the speed and, you know, the strategies by which government tends to address this. And it's not just really for Nigeria, because we're seeing even some developed countries come under the hammer with this pandemic. But for us, as a developing country, is more glaring. So is it really about opening safely? If we open safely, Or if we reopen, are we opening safely? And when we do reopen fully, are we confident that our authorities are capable of handling whatsoever matter that will arise as a result of the pandemic?
Well, Nancy, that's why I said that we need to look at, review our current protocols for managing COVID-19 and also integrate those other facilities that we have left side of in the course of managing the COVID-19. The key thing about opening, whether it has exposed the underbelly of our governance system, is that we've always known we have a fragile healthcare system. It's just some recent that the president celebrated the eradication of white polio in the country. These are things that have been eradicated in other countries of the world for a long time. Look at our maternal mortality rate. Look at our infant mortality rate. Look at some of the basic indices you used to measure the quality of healthcare in the country. We are backward in those areas. But we also have to recognize that even the most advanced economies, we are challenged. Our advisor said we are also challenged by COVID-19. As at now, the US has more than 1.9 million, 1.9 million infected cases. We've seen the US, which is the most advanced economy in the world, and have highest number of deaths so far, followed by Brazil. So in reality, and I think followed by United Kingdom. So even the most advanced countries are running short of the capacity to deal with those health crises. Like I said, it's one of the most virulent viral infections that we've ever seen in the world. And unfortunately, we still don't understand it fully, how it's transmitted and how really to avoid it. But when it comes to Nigeria in particular, we're dealing with opening of the economy, and can we deal with the possible fallout of such opening of the economy? Like I said earlier, we really can't continue to lock down the economy. Nancy, you need to talk to the people at the rung of the ladder in terms of income level. A lot of them have been impoverished. I had a couple of people who spoke with me and told me that they've completely lived on exhausted their capital. The small and medium scale enterprise, they've actually completely exhausted their capital during the lockdown. They need family and friends to support them to restart their businesses. So the reality is that we really couldn't continue to lock down. But are we doing the right things we should do to minimize infection, community infection? Like I said earlier, on the aspect that relates to testing, I think we are failed woefully. There's no justification why today we have only tested 151,000. So that aspect we have not done well. But I'm holding on to the hope that maybe because our demography will help us overcome the challenges of this healthcare. I looked at the percentage of fatality we've had, just about 2.24% that we've had so far, which is basically because of the demography of our population. Because according to the Minister of Health, most of the infected people are the age of 30 and 40 or thereabout, and these people are at the highest level of their natural immunity level. We don't really have a lot of old people like we had in Italy or Spain or France or US that got infected and died of. And probably our elderly people, most of them have already died because of failure of medical services or quality of medical care. So you ought to have left in the country are largely very young people whose immunity level is at the peak. And many of them are able to weather the infection without major severe health care needs. So maybe that's what we can hold on to.
But Mr. Chukwu, there is also the risk there that younger demographic can also pass the infection to our older people. You know, if you also take a look at the people, if you take a look at the map or the chart of those that have died, they are those that are not entirely young. So there is also that risk of younger people, even as we reopen the economy, have that, tendency of spreading the infection. Though you also said, and I also saw from the WHO, it seems they are just having different views on this, asymptomatic, not being infectious and all of that. So there's no clear-cut direction as at how this infection is going. But let's take a look at the local flights that are meant to resume this week. Precautions to be taken. I think the PTF, Presidential Task Force, has spoken about that. If you want to travel, there would be some kind of precautions at the airport. 3 hours, you have to get to the airport 3 hours before your flight takes off to be able to adhere to those safety measures. Is this a step in the right direction?
Well, like I said earlier, it's difficult to continue to lock down the economy. It's better you open the economy in an orderly format and then put regulations to guide people's behavior, unlike what we had an unregulated environment. Nancy, are you aware that people have been flying around in the country?
Yes, I'm
Okay, of
aware.
course, we know some of them have come to some of them have come to the fore. What has happened is that most of the private aircraft now turn themselves into commercial. That's actually what happened. And they were making tons of money flying people around the country. So that has been the case. And they will tell you they need to get approval. And then in a jiffy, they get approval. So those are some of the failures that we have had to deal with. So I think it's better we now open the airlines and then allow some orderliness in the cost of people moving around. I'm not sure those people who are providing private aircraft for moving people around, we are doing observing all the protocols like disinfecting the aircraft and what have you. So, but if now the government allows for flights to take place, they will have to enforce some of those protocols. I hope we will have the discipline to do that.
I was actually coming to that, Mr. Chukwu. I was actually coming to that when you talk about orderliness. Can Nigerians really be orderly? I'm sorry, but from what we have seen, can Nigerians really be orderly? If you go to even banks now, some banks are not allowing their customers in. A lot of them, customers are outside. Some are not wearing masks and all of that. So in this, as we fight this pandemic, how can we get Nigerians to be orderly? Or is our population also a challenge to get us to be orderly? I'm looking at all the sides.
It has nothing to do with population, Nancy. China is 1.4 billion. Our population is less than 20% of the Chinese population, so it has nothing to do with being highly populated. We are smaller than US, we are smaller than India, we are smaller than Brazil, a couple of other countries, Indonesia and what have you. But the reality is that in the course of life, we've built a culture that in some instances lacks rigor. And that lack of rigor simply means we are also not consistent in our approach to life. I don't want to say a lot of negative things that I feel sometimes that we as a country, we as a people have. But one of the things I've decided as a person is that I train my children to imbibe those attributes that you cherish in other nationals. And then I hope that they will also be able to project that even when I had passed to the greater beyond, or the great beyond, that they will live those lives that will show that look, you are trained to have grit, you are trained to be consistent, you are trained to have rigor. A lot of Nigerians are not that. And if you want to taste what I'm saying, ask somebody to come to work every 6 a.m. and they sweep a particular point. The person will sweep for the few days you're observing him. The day you don't come, once the person knows you're not there, he will come by 7. So that has been the challenge we have, and it has permeated our culture. It has become a culture that we really need to change. But we can decide to change it. It's just a matter of training and enforcement. The issue about whether we can observe all the protocols highlighted in flights, people coming to the airport by 3 hours ahead of time, what do you call it? The big men, those who are followed by protocol, are not supposed to enter the airport with their protocol officials and signalement. I can bet you that will fail from day one, because I don't see the regulators enforcing that. When a big man comes to the airport, he will come with 10 policemen, and they will make all the noise and scatter everybody. And they're not going to observe the 3 hours pre-arrival time. So those are things we have to, the cultures we've developed over time, and it's unfortunate we are still living with that. But I pray that, given like the Nigerian NCA has said that aviation is a global sector and that we must abide by the global standards. So I'm hoping that the enforcement of global standards will compel Nigeria to enforce the minimum standards required to ensure that we fly safely, that we observe some of the health protocols involved in flying, and that the airlines and the airports do not become centers of infections or transmission in the country.
Let's talk about this issue that has become a matter of concern for some people, especially parents, reopening of schools for graduating students, as the president has approved their resumption. I think primary 6, GSS 3 and SS 3. The Annam think tank, Annam Foundation think tank, I saw the press release over the weekend, headed by Atedo Peterside, was sent to me. And when I looked at their press release, they were of the view that reopening our schools, even for graduating students, is a premature decision. What do you think? Would you send your child to school if he's in primary 6, GSS3 or SS3 to take the exams?
Interestingly, I have a son who is in primary 6.
Oh, he's in primary 6 now?
Yes. But the school adopted an online program, and all throughout this period, they were in class. They just finished the exams. I don't know if the school will call them to be come back to the school physically and try to do another set of exams. I doubt if that will happen. I strongly doubt if the school will do that. But there's a high risk of infection at the school.
How will he sit for common entrance exams? Will it be done online?
Yeah. He has already started for all the. In fact, he started for one yesterday. One of the admission entrance exams on Saturday, and it was online. So it was a Zoom examination, and he just had to sit in my study, and then they did his exams electronically and submitted his results tests. So I think technology has actually helped a lot. Unfortunately, because of the level of poverty, because of the level of backwardness of some of our societies, it might be difficult to adopt the same technological facilities in the rural areas. So the challenge is, how do you deal with those instances? Unfortunately, I understand the risk we have is that we have to allow all those who are in final classes to move to the next promotion level. So those in primary 6, we have to automatically move to JS1, and those in JS3, we have to automatically move to SS1. For me, we have to compare the risk of these children getting infected and bringing the infection home and expanding the network of the number of people infected with the risk that you are going to promote some people who may not ordinarily qualify to be promoted. I think that risk is lower. The risk of promoting people who ordinarily shouldn't have been promoted is lower than the risk of community infection that could be engendered by the reopening of the schools just for these people to take their exams. Because like I mentioned repeatedly in this conversation, the protocols involved in socializing is purely antisocial. And I don't think children at that level will.
Mr. Chukwu, are you still there? Okay, the picture is frozen now. Let's try as much as possible to see if we can reconnect with Mr. Johnson Chukwu. But as we try to do that, let me take some of your comments coming through on Twitter. I can see a few comments. Okay, Adewale says, God bless you, Nancy. God bless you too, Adewale. Okay, Deborah says, okay, did not work at all. I guess she was responding to the question when I asked if the lockdowns work. She did say that the lockdowns did not work. JB Nwafo says, of course it did not. It's very clear to see it was a copy and pasting from other countries. It was not properly planned, and the execution was totally flawed. Okay, Mr. Johnson Chukwu is back right now. I don't know what's happening. The side effect of technology you can see. So, Mr. Chukwu, just quickly land on the points you were making, because we have about 3 minutes to the end of the program. Oh, okay. Okay, let's try as much. Okay. Let's try and connect him again. Okay, Chima on Twitter is saying, Mr. Johnson, you said it all, but on testing issue, the state governments have not done their bit. Dele Jack Solomon on Twitter is saying, urgent measures are needed to limit the damage, rebuild the economy, and make growth more robust, resilient, and sustainable. This can be achieved by getting money directly to private sector so that we may see a quicker return to business creation after this pandemic has passed. Okay, keep your comments coming through. You can join us on all our social media platforms. Join us on Twitter right now. You can send me a tweet. You can also send us a tweet, Moneyline TV. That's on Twitter. Okay, those are the handles on the screen, so I need not say that. Nancy also on Twitter. You can like us on Facebook. Don't forget to go to our YouTube page. our YouTube channel rather. Yes, you're listening to me. Yes, right now, click on it. Moneyline with Nancy TV on YouTube. When you go there, don't forget to subscribe. Don't leave that space without subscribing. Mr. Chukwu, I can see that you're back. You have 1 minute. Let's just quickly round this up. Mr. Chukwu, are you there? Oh, okay.
Nancy, can you come again?
Okay,
come again?
We just have 1 minute, so let me just allow you round up as we reopen the economy, trying to reopen safely. What do you think it will look like in just 1 minute?
The network has become very bad. I can barely hear you.
Okay. I asked, what do you think reopening of the economy will look like in just 1 minute?
Come again. You said, do I think what?
What do you think reopening of the economy will look like in just 1 minute?
I didn't get the question.
Oh,
Sorry
okay.
about that.
Oh, okay, Mr. Chukwu. I'm afraid we just have to leave it here. We just have to leave it here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. It's almost 12, so let me give you 30 seconds if you can hear me. Tell me what reopening of the economy will look like. 30 seconds.
What the economy will look like after the...
Yes, as we reopen.
Well, I think the economy will struggle to stabilize. It will take quite some time. We are still going to deal with a contraction. I mean, the government has already projected that with a 2.3 trillion naira injection into the economy will contract by 0.59%. Of course, we know the World Bank has increased the projection of Nigeria's contraction to about 5.4%. But we all have to accept the fact that the economy is likely going to contract.
Okay.
The coming months.
Okay, I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chukwu, for, as always, speaking with me on the program. I wish you a great week.